Hey everybody, William Wallace here. Thank you for watching my show, William Wallace for America. And today I'm with State Representative Larry Frieman, District 74. And I'm going to let him explain a little about where his district is. And we're going to talk about some things going on in the legislature coming up in just a month or two. And I think they're really important for you to hear. And I think that when you hear what he has, you'll find that you want to be paying attention to the next session. Larry, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
William, thank you for having me again. I really appreciate you inviting me on your show. District 74 starts in St. Tammany Parish around Abita Springs, and it's the northern part of St. Tammany Parish. It also encompasses the western piece of Washington Parish and the northeastern part of Tangipahoa Parish. So it's a very large geographic district, but very rural, so my constituents are very spread out.
I like that. I love that area up there. I've been up there a couple of times. Is Boca Chica in your district, or you bordered Boca Chica?
It's bordering. It's in my district, or a part of it could be in my district. Yes.
So, what is going to be the focus of this next legislative session that's coming up, and when does that actually start?
Well, it starts April 12th, and this is a fiscal year session, which means that legislators only have the ability to bring 5 non-fiscal bills. We can bring as many fiscal bills, tax bills, tax reform bills, you name it. We can bring as unlimited amounts of those bills, but we're only limited to 5 non-fiscal bills.
So if anything's related to a fiscal policy, you can bring up as many of those as you want.
Yes, yes, and there will be a number of policies being brought, a number of those types of bills being brought. But again, the non-fiscal, things that don't have to do with taxes or the budget types of things, we're limited to 5.
We're going to talk about your non-fiscal ones here in a few minutes, which I think that everybody will be interested in, especially if they appreciate the Second Amendment, and especially if they appreciate limited powers in government. They're going to be interested in hearing yours. But first, I want to talk about the fiscal policies that are coming up here in the next session, and what our biggest concern is for this next session that you can see.
Well, the biggest concern that I see is that we're going to have a budget shortfall due to COVID. We're not sure exactly what that number is going to be. They're waiting for a revenue estimating committee to come back with numbers, and of course, they're also waiting for the feds to determine whether there's going to be any additional monies from CARE Act or something that's going to come to the state. But all the experts are saying that we're going to have some type of budget shortfall due to COVID, and that is really going to be one of the biggest problems we're going to be facing in this particular session. How do we address the shortfall? Will there be additional federal money to help out each state with that shortfall? And then how do we spend that money? How do we use it? I could tell you just personally, I'm not a big fan of using one-time money for recurring expenses.
Exactly.
I think that's a very bad fiscal policy.
Short-sighted.
Very short-sighted, and the legislature is known to do that in the past. So I'm going to be very closely watching that part of it, and I will not be very supportive of using one-time money for recurring expenses.
Yeah, it's kind of like in our Constitution, I think it's on oil and gas, based on oil and gas revenue. But as that fluctuates, it's really affected our spending and our income a whole lot. But like COVID, like you're saying, you can't have that that's short-sighted to try to base our budget off of that. When they shut down businesses, which reduce tax revenue to the state, which is that part of the reason why we're having a shortfall?
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about it. The government created this shortfall by shutting down businesses. Even today, we're still at 50% capacity in restaurants. Some bars can't even be open. It's really a shame what is going on with businesses. People's livelihoods are at stake. Some are probably closed and never will open again. So when you start decreasing the number of places we can get revenue from, you're going to have a shortfall. It's not rocket science.
It's almost like using just basic math. If a business is shut down by 50%, because there's some elected officials that, see that as being the answer, then tax revenues to the state are going to be cut by, you know, some, might not be 50%, but might be some proportional number. And then likewise, then elected officials are going to later have to come back to the citizens of the state asking for higher taxes to make up for that, or they'll try anyway, to ask for that money that in that shortfall that they themselves caused. Is that a reasonable idea?
That's a very good analysis. I will tell you this, I would never agree to ask the citizens for more tax money, especially in a time like this. I am not a tax person. I am not for higher taxes. In fact, I think we ought to be lowering taxes, lowering our spending at all costs. So any proposal that's going to, you know, increase our tax burden on businesses or individuals, I am not going to be for that. And
that's why I like interviewing you. I like hearing about your low taxes and lower spending ideas, which I think is going to be another reason to watch this next fiscal, this next session that's going to be focused mostly on fiscal matters. You know, so what types of bills? What's the biggest concern that Louisianans are worried about other than this fiscal policy? I hear there's a gas tax coming out.
There is. There's a big push for an increase in the gas tax. Right now, I believe we're at 16 or 20 cents a gallon. I'm not really sure exactly the number. But the argument is, of course, that we need to build more roads and bridges, and we need more revenue to do that. Now, I don't disagree with that. I do think we have a crumbling infrastructure in our state. But I don't believe it's because we don't have enough money. I think we have plenty enough money. And what I mean by that, when the gas tax was sold to the people back early on, it was sold to us as a means of building roads and bridges and maintaining our infrastructure. Mm-hmm. So we passed the gas tax. Sometime later, a previous legislature decided, because we were so flush with cash at the time, that they took the entire Department of Transportation and moved that department into this gas tax trust fund. The gas tax is collected and goes into the Transportation Trust Fund, or better known as the TTF.
Is this kind of like all good intentions, was it good intentions are paved?
There's no doubt about it. So they moved
the road to hell is paved with good intentions?
That's right. A previous legislature moves the entire Department of Transportation into the trust fund. So in other words, the Transportation Trust Fund now funds all of the expenses of the Department of Transportation. So essentially, the statistics are showing now that 75% of every dollar collected on the gas tax is now funding the expenses of the DOTD. So only 25 cents of every dollar is going to roads and building roads and bridges.
And the other 75% is?
Overhead expense for the Department of Transportation.
So now your idea that you're working on, or that you like, is which one?
Well, I think there's a counter to that. And another legislator...
So instead of increasing gas taxes, there's a counter to that.
Instead of increasing gas taxes, there's going to be a bill that's going to be introduced that will phase out the Department of Transportation, taking it out of the trust fund and putting it back into the general fund, like where it belongs, over time, probably like a 7-year period. I'm not sure the details of the bill yet, but the last time it was about a 7-year phase out. So each time they phase out a portion of the DOTD and take it out of the trust fund, that increases the revenue, the available revenue to spend on roads and bridges. So over 7 years, we will increase the available revenue by 75% and never raise a penny of taxes.
This sounds like a more efficient plan.
Yes. Now, the counter argument you're going to hear is, well, how do you pay for the Department of Transportation? Because now they're in the general fund. My answer to that is, that's not the trust fund's problem, right? We got to figure that out. But we shouldn't be using gas tax money to pay for overhead of the DOTD. It should be, it was sold to us for roads and bridges, and I believe a previous legislature duped our citizens and then started paying for something else with that money. And we need to get back to the true, pure use of the TTF money.
just with a simple-minded thinking, it sounds like if you take that trust fund money and the DOTD money and you put it all in one fund and you fund the DOTD and roads and bridges all with one, the money will be used more efficiently. Is that the objective, or am I being too simple-minded?
Well, I don't know what the idea was back then. What I think the idea was by the legislature who did it was that we had a lot of money in the trust fund, and we didn't have a lot of money in our general fund. So they were able to fund the DOTD with the trust fund money, which freed up general fund money to use for other reasons.
I got it.
And to me, that was just wrong. It was just a bait and switch, in my opinion, and we need to get back to that pure use for just roads and bridges.
I like how you say bait and switch, because it sounds to me like one fund on one thing shorts money for one group, but has excesses in another one, which kind of, you think of DOTD and roads and bridges are all kind of, in my mind, would be lumped into one. But when you separate the money, one group gets shorted and one has a surplus.
Yeah.
And now this kind of putting it together kind of makes a little bit more efficient use of roads and bridges and DOTD in all of our state.
Well, again, we just need to use that trust fund money for to build roads and bridges. And we have a $13 billion backlog of roads and bridge building. So the studies have shown that had we not taken the DOTD and put them in the trust fund and used that money over the years like we should have, we would have never had the backlog of work. So we created our own problem. Once again, government creating its own problems.
Yeah, hindsight being 2020, now there's an opportunity to fix that problem for future generations, fix roads and bridges, which, by the way, our state has an out-migration problem with its citizenship, here in Louisiana, or with our residents here in Louisiana. But when we rebuild, and roads and bridges just a part of it, when we have better roads and bridges, it all goes back to bringing in more economic development here into our state, which helps keeps people here in our state. So not only will those people be kept, but they'll be taxed less. It sounds to me like a win-win situation.
Well, of course, every state is the basic foundation of the state is of its infrastructure.
Right.
So if you don't have good infrastructure, you're already behind the 8 ball as compared to your counterparts around us, Texas, Mississippi, Arkansas, you name it. So our infrastructure really needs work, and it needs to be refurbished. And that is the building block of economic development, is your infrastructure. So to kind of sum it up, I am not in favor of the gas tax. In fact, I am going to be an opponent of that gas tax bill. But I also I'm not going to just say no. I think there's another solution, and that solution is that bill removing the DOTD from the trust fund and freeing up more money each and every year to build roads and bridges, and we've accomplished the goal.
Does that bill have a number yet?
No, I don't think it's been filed yet.
So everybody stay tuned in the future for that, and I'll make sure that we get that number for what that will be. Keep an eye out for it. One more thing before I talk about your bills is that we talked about the shortfall here in Louisiana that we're facing right now, but from what I understand, that if Biden gets rid of some of the Trump tax cuts, that's going to add a whole nother fiscal problem onto our state.
Well, President Biden, anything he's doing right now, I don't think is really helping us all that much. And in fact, I'm really concerned about a number of things that he's contemplating and things he's already done. So yes, I think it's going to cause us some additional problems. They are still mired in a quagmire there on how to pass certain stimulus packages or things. And I don't mind helping states,
right?
But some of the things that I'm hearing out of Washington is this bill is just mostly other things and not COVID related.
Exactly.
So it's really just a massive spending bill, pork barrel bill. I'd like to see it pared down, just address COVID, help the states out a little bit, and let's move on.
So at a time when he gets rid of the Keystone Pipeline and we're going to watch gas prices going up already, it's not a good time for Louisiana to ask for more gas taxes, especially for roads and bridges, when there's another opportunity to be able to take the money that's already there and direct it in another way to lower that burden on the people of Louisiana.
Well, and that's right, William. Our state is very dependent upon the oil and gas industry, which I'm a big oil and gas guy, so I like the industry.
Yeah.
But I'd also think our state has to diversify itself a little bit. We can't continue to put all our eggs in one basket. It's unsustainable. And with what the federal government is doing with the Keystone Pipeline and trying to really harm the fossil fuel industry, that doesn't bode well for us. So we really need to start spreading out our base, and rather than keeping it just limited to the oil and gas industry.
The standard deduction that Trump had in his tax reduction plan, they're talking about getting rid of that, and I've heard that if they get rid of that, that's going to cause a burden on Louisiana with the way our tax structure works here.
Yeah, and I believe the more tax policy guys in the legislature are looking at that. And trying to determine how we're going to address that.
Something for us to keep an eye on in the next session. I'd like to talk about the two bills that you want to talk about today that you're putting through the legislative session that are non-fiscal related, and I'll let you tell us about those.
Sure. Well, the first bill that I am looking at doing is, I'm calling it the Louisiana Firearms Protection Act. And what this is, it comes because of course, the new president and the things that have been coming out of Washington that they're talking about more gun control, taxing ammunition or guns, and taking away our rights, so to speak. So when I started hearing that, I started doing some research, and I looked around, and there's a few states that have had similar bills: Texas, Nebraska, and Missouri. So I got those three bills, and I kind of looked at those bills and understood what they were doing. So basically what it does, it says that if the federal government issues a law, a tax, a levy, an executive order, anything that affects our Second Amendment rights or our rights under our state constitution to carry firearms or possess firearms, the bill will say that no state, parish, or local official, law enforcement agency, anybody affiliated or employed by the state, parish, or local can enforce that law against the citizens of Louisiana.
I love this bill that you're talking about.
And it also gives the citizens of Louisiana a cause of action if they do that against us. So if they come in, if a sheriff comes in and then tries to enforce one of these federal laws against you, you would then have a cause of action in court to sue them for some type of monetary damage. So not only does it prevent them, it also puts a little teeth into the law in a punitive type situation. So to say, if you do this, we're going to be able to sue you. And by the way, they can't hide behind their immunity, a qualified immunity, or anything like that. They can't hide behind that if they go ahead and enforce an unenforceable law under this particular statute.
What I like about this is not only the protection of our constitutional rights, the protection of our Second Amendment, but I really like the fact that this uses our 10th Amendment in the United States Constitution for state rights. Right. Where states are exercising their rights using the 10th Amendment here. Does that, I guess your bill, obviously it basically goes off of those rights, but do you make any attachment to that in this bill?
Well, I don't specifically reference
it's just the innuendo,
the 10th Amendment. Yeah, I don't specifically reference the 10th Amendment, but it is part of the 10th Amendment rights. Yeah. Now, let me make sure your listeners aren't confused, because I don't want to sell a bill of goods. What it cannot do, and what we cannot do at the state level, is prevent the federal government from enforcing its own law. So in other words, if they pass a law, and I'm going to go extreme here, William, they say, you have to give up all your AR-15s, right? The government's going to take your AR-15. My bill will say that the parish, the state, the local sheriffs and law enforcement, they can't come and take it from you. But we can't stop the federal government from sending in the federal marshals to come do it. Or the National Guard, or whoever. So I don't want to sound like this is a absolute blanket protection. Right. It is protecting us from our own within our state. It is a safeguard, But again, the federal government has power over us, and they could send in the National Guard, they could send in the marshals to enforce it. But my bill will prevent the locals and the state from enforcing those things.
Well, I like that point, because you always hear about, people talk about that, is that the local parish official won't, come here and take them. I know, he's my brother-in-law, or he's my brother-in-law's cousin's brother's, but there are in every state, especially ours, there may be one or two parish officials that might try to, in maybe a Democratic type of area that agree with that law, try to do that. But this bill prevents a state paid official, we'll say.
Yeah, a state paid official, a parish paid official, a local paid official, anyone who's employed or is an agency of subdivision, political subdivision, anything from state level on down to local would not be able to enforce that.
So when this bill comes out, we'll give you the numbers, so that way you'll be able to look that up too. And I'll remind everybody that they can watch the hearings for all of these bills online. You don't have to actually go to the Capitol to watch it. You can actually go online to legis.la.gov and watch the committees where they're debating these bills, and actually watch how the voting goes down in these. So you can see that online. So Larry, what is your second bill that you want to talk about today?
Well, the second bill is something I brought in the last special session. It's basically a bill to try to balance the power between the legislature and the governor on emergency power acts and the Public Health Emergency Power Act. As we all know, and I think we're all aware at this point, that the governor has pretty much complete and absolute power to do whatever he wants in a public emergency, or a public health emergency. For example, he can issue mass mandates, which he has done. He can close businesses, which he has done. He could restrict businesses to 50%. They could stop sporting events. All of these things are within the power of the governor. The legislature has very little checks and balances in these situations. But there is a statute, and we have tried to utilize this, and of course it's in court right now in litigation, is that the legislature can file what's called a petition to end the public health emergency, which we have done. Of course, the governor has sued us, and it's now in litigation. What my bill is going to do is to broaden that power a little bit of the legislature. We're going to still use the same mechanism, the petition, but the petition in the current law, it's either an all or nothing proposition. We either cancel the entire public health emergency or we don't do anything. With my bill, we can go in and strategically say, we don't want the mask mandate, or we don't want you to restrict restaurants. So we can go in with a scalpel and surgically cut out the things we don't like, but leave the public health emergency in place, because the public health emergency triggers a lot of benefits for the state to procure PPE equipment and get monies from the government and get that help. So rather than completely cut it out, we can just go in and surgically remove the pieces we don't like through a petition. And that, I brought that bill in the last session. It died in committee in the Senate, which is where a lot of our bills go to die, by the way. So I'm hoping, I mean, I got it through the House, and it got to the Senate, so I'm hoping we can get it at least to the governor's desk. I mean, honestly, I don't really have a lot of faith that the governor would sign that, because it would be reducing his power. But I'm hoping that my colleagues on both sides of the aisle realize that this is a good bill for everyone, including Democrats, because someday there's going to be a Republican governor.
Exactly.
And so I think my colleagues should really look a little bit more foresighted at this, to say, well, man, we really should be able to have more checks and balances by the legislature. Having this complete and ultimate power in one vested branch of government is not good. We really need those checks and balances, and this is a step in the right direction towards instituting more checks and balances.
And what I like about this is that it's not that the legislature is trying to do a power grab to get the power away from the government and give it to themselves. basically this sounds to me like the legislature is just asking for equal power, which is what our United States Constitution is based off of, which is what people crave or desire when it comes to freedom and liberty, is that they don't want, they want a check and balance. And this basically is saying, hey, we don't have a full check and balance in our state right now, and that's what this is doing. And you're not asking for a complete power grab. You're just saying, hey, look, we want to go in on what we disagree with, and what I would like people to even notice even more is that it's the people all over the state elect their individual representatives for their district. So it's not like one state rep is asking for that complete power. It's all the individual representatives, cumulative, which makes also a cumulative collection of the voice of all the people in Louisiana. So there could be a stop. I mean, like if the majority of reps don't like it, they can stop it.
That's right.
Or if they do like it, they can make it happen. So the people don't lose their voice in this bill, as I'm trying to say.
No, that's exactly right. And let me just tell you, just from a practical standpoint, what we're hoping to do, we've seen through this pandemic that the governor does not consult with the legislature at all. He makes his decisions. Sometimes he doesn't even tell us what his decision is prior to him going on TV. And sometimes we get it maybe 5 or 10 minutes before he goes on TV. What I think, if we can get this bill in place and this law in place, this law change, what I think it'll do, it'll bring the governors, this governor and future governors, to the table.
I like that.
And have them talk to us and tell us what we're going to do, get our thoughts and ideas, get our opinions, and try to work collaboratively rather than one guy being a dictator. And that's really what this bill is. And that's really the ultimate practicality of it if it gets in place. That'll bring both branches of government to the table to work together to try to combat these things. Now, we're not saying, the governor has to have certain power because they have to act quickly.
Right.
But quickly, we've been almost a year into this.
Yeah.
Okay. The first 30 days, that's quickly. Now we're into almost a year. So we really should be having a lot more voice in this matter, and we don't. And this is a bill to help us do that.
I understand, and I actually like that because you're asking, for co-equal branches. I say that, bouncing off of our United Constitution, our United States, but it's asking for you all to have more of a say, which puts more say back into the people's hands, because the governor, being one individual, doesn't always have to listen to everybody, but the representatives for individual districts have to listen to the people of their constituents, of their districts, and so that gives more power back to those people.
Well, absolutely. The governor represents about 4.5 million people. I represent about 42,000. So you could see the difference. I have a smaller group I have to answer to, and their voices are heard better by me than they are by the governor. So it just stands to reason to balance this power out, not taking away his right to control and run this pandemic, but it also makes him have to deal with the legislature and get our thoughts and hear from our constituents and then work together on it. And I think ultimately, if we ever have another one of these and we can get this fix in place, I think you're going to see a total different response.
And what I lastly like about this is that you're not saying it brings parties together. It doesn't exclude one party. It actually gives power to both parties to bring ideas together. And like you said, in the future, when there's another Republican governor, it gives the Democrats some say in this too. If the Republican governor in the future does something that they don't like, it gives those districts a voice too.
Yes, and all it would take is a majority of either house, either the House of Representatives or the Senate. A majority of one of those branches can file that petition and take out the things that they don't like. So it is a majority, but it's not a 2/3. It's just a simple majority. So yes, it would be very beneficial for the Democrats to get on board with this, because as you just said, we will likely have a Republican governor, maybe even in the next term, and then then they will at least have an opportunity to have a say-so if this occurs again.
Well, Larry, is there anything else you'd like to mention to everybody to keep an eye out for in the next session? Have we talked about everything, or anything that you're passionate about that you'd like for people to take notice of?
Well, but as you probably can tell, I am a pro-Second Amendment guy. So there is another bill that I'm co-authoring with a representative from North Louisiana, my good friend Danny McCormick. Danny brought it in the regular session, but because of COVID, it never got a hearing, but it's called constitutional carry, which basically means under our state and federal constitution, we have the right to keep and bear arms and carry concealed without a permit. And so the name of it is constitutional carry. You have the constitutional right to carry. And he's bringing that bill. I'm a co-author on it so far, and we'll probably have a number of co-authors, which will be coming in this particular session. And we are hoping to get that through the Senate. We'll get it through the House. We hope to get it through the Senate. And of course, the governor, I have to give him at least this much credit. He has been pro-Second Amendment.
Right.
So if it gets to his desk, we have some reason to believe that he would sign that bill. So we're hoping that that's going to happen. And there are states, I think Oklahoma may have been the most recent state to pass constitutional carry, but there are a number of states, I don't know the exact number, but there are a number of states that have constitutional carry now, and it is kind of sweeping across the country.
While I looked at the map the other day, and it's all the states around us are all doing constitutional carry.
Right.
It makes perfect sense for not only our United States Constitution for us to have our constitutional right to carry. I completely agree with it. But as a state, it makes sense for us to work with our other states around us, on the same.
Yeah, and since this is probably going to be the end of our interview here, let me also say, because it's a fiscal session, which we had talked about earlier, I'm really excited that there's going to be a number of tax reform packages that's going to come down the pipe. A lot of different perspectives, a lot of different angles. I know one is going to try to completely eliminate the personal income tax and make us like Texas and now Mississippi, who has just passed a bill to eliminate their personal income tax. That's one package that's going to be introduced. And then there's others that's going to try to flatten our taxes, make it more predictable, maybe try to do away with some of the older franchise taxes and ad valorem taxes and things like that. But it's going to be a number of different packages. I haven't seen the details on any one package yet. Nothing has been filed, but I am aware of a number of legislators working on these. And then there'll be some individual nipping around the edge type bills. So I'm kind of excited. I'm really hoping that we can make some reforms to our taxing structure. And that's really where we're lacking in the region, is our tax structure. The way we tax is not really good any longer when you compare us to the folks around us. So it's going to be important for us as a state to grow, to advance, for economic development, to change our tax structure for the better. Now, unfortunately, I am not a tax policy guy, but I'm going to rely on the guys who are and really evaluate these things, and hopefully we can make some good headway in this particular session.
I love that. And then, I mean, these are exciting times, especially now with, this much of a momentum in the next session to reduce taxes. Maybe we can get something done on that measure. And again, we got to start acting now to stop that out-migration of our population from our state, and having a better tax system does just that.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. I really appreciate it. And I would like everybody to, of course, share the video to get some more information out, but also look into Larry and look at some of the great things that he's doing in his district, and keep in touch with the next session. And stay tuned for more of my videos here on William Wallace for America, and share them with people so we can really make a positive difference and find things that unite us in our great state of Louisiana. Thank you very much, and have a good day.